This is going to be another ball bounce, but this time we have to animate something heavy and we have to animate something light. So let's create our new scene here. And this time I'm going to go faster because a lot of this is the same principles, but this time we're focusing more on the weight of things. I'm going to create 2 references. Bring in 2 copies of the advanced ball here. Okay. And just move it to the side there. Now, I believe the frame range here will go to, we'll do the same thing, 100. Okay. Animated from the side view again, and I moved the ball in the wrong direction. Move it over here. There we go. Let's bring in a floor plane. That's a cylinder. Let's see. Week 3, we're already getting tired. Oh, can't even tell a cylinder from a cube anymore. So again, negative half of the scale Y will give you a nice floor plane right there. We want to frame up our shots. So I'm just going to make sure that overscan is set. Bring this in. And for these, I'm going to start them at the same height. I'm going to set a key here. Oh, make sure I only grab the right control there. And these ones, let's go a little higher. So 1, 2, let's do 3 ball heights high for this one. Okay, cool. So we've got our 2 spheres right here, and we're ready to animate them. So once again, I'm going to do the same workflow. It's going to be layered. I'm going to get the translated Y first because honestly, that's what's going to be the majority of a ball bounce is the bounce. So I want to get that in here. So for this first drop, let's make it a little faster. So it's going to take 8 frames to drop here. I'm going to drop it there. From there, I'm just imagining. So this was a 16 frame drop right there. So the way I'm thinking about this is imagine there was a full bounce. We're starting from the peak here. It drops. That's 8 frames. We're missing half of the bounce. So that would make a 16 frame bounce total. That means that this next bounce can't be longer than that. So let's do 12 frames. So 16, 12. Yeah, that should do it. So it's going to contact the ground here. So that means the peak is going to be right in the middle. So 6 frames. Nine. That's the wrong frame. There we go. There we go. My math is right there. Okay, so that's going to bounce up there. Boom, boom. And then it's a heavy ball. So, boom, boom. And then actually, let's do that less. So it comes in. Let's do 8 frames. No. Okay. So let me actually redo this. Put it back where I had it. So if ever I'm unsure of the timing, I usually try to think it out. So make the sound effects in my head, or I'll just try to put in a very rough copy of what I want here. That's what it is. Yeah. So I'm thinking of the timing that fall. So I want 9. Yeah. So 17. So 8 frames. Yeah, I was right. So I want that next bounce to be very quick. 17. And then from there, it's going into micro bounces because this is going to be the heavy ball. I want this to really feel quite heavy. So right away, it's going to lose a lot of energy. Let's go for a 4 frame bounce and then a 2 frame bounce right there. There we go. That should do it. So let's get those middle keys in and get our bounces right through there. So you'll notice there that I was not going off of anything specific. And at that point, it can be kind of tricky. You're just kind of going with your instinct, essentially. What I find very helpful is making those sound effects and trying to think of the timing of that. How fast is that going through? Now, it's not going to give you exactly what you need, but it's going to be sometimes pretty close, especially the more experience you have. So I'm just trying to get this here where we get that nice micro bounce right there on the last one. And this is a heavy bounce, so we don't need a lot. And then let's get that degradation arc in here. Now, since we have so few bounces, I don't really need a curve in there. I can just do it manually, like so. Now, okay, cool. I think I can go even lower on that last one. The last bounce is really, you feel it more than you see it. Okay, cool. So let's actually get those contacts working now. So all of this is the same thing that we were talking about before. So make those nice sharp contacts right through there. And then let's affect our translate Y. Get that nice peak in there. Now with a heavy ball, you can get a little bit more weight by adding a little bit more hang time. So it bounces up faster, holds, crashes back down a little harder. So I'm going to try and do that, but what you don't want to have is a plateau like this. See how it's almost straight up and down here and flat at the top? You can see it especially here. If you think of, again, the speed of your curve, that would cause the ball to pop up, hold, slam back down. We want an arc in there. So fast, slow, fast. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at this. See how this feels. Feels pretty heavy. Yeah, I think that's good. There we go. Heavy ball complete. So now I'm just going to get my translate Z working here. Now a heavy ball, the translation, we can go two ways with it. You usually, to exaggerate the feeling of weight, you either want to have it roll very little, so it stops rolling very quickly because it's just so heavy it's digging into the dirt. Think of it that way. Or think of it like a bowling ball in a bowling alley, where if you just put that ball down on the bowling alley and just give it a little bit of a spin, that momentum of that ball on this really slick surface, that ball is just going to keep rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling because the mass and momentum of it doesn't want to be stopped. It's that the physics principle of an object at rest wants to stay at rest, an object in motion wants to stay in motion. Once you start a heavy mass moving forward, like a train is a good example, it's very hard to get it to stop. So we can do that in two different ways here. I think for this one, I'm going to keep it pretty short. Just because. No real reason. We'll just see how it feels. If it doesn't feel great, we can always adjust it. Okay. So let's go about there. And I'm going to have it stop maybe right around here. Okay. Now we get the translate Z curve right in there. Okay. There we go. Cool. So now let's copy that, paste it on our roll X. Flip it by scaling it, and then we're just going to scale this curve up till it feels like it's actually rolling. And this is where you can zoom in and Alt 5 to turn on wireframe on shaded. That actually looks pretty good right there. I feel like I can maybe ease this to a stop a little bit more. There we go. Okay. My keyboard switched to French mode. No. Interesting. There we go. There we go. Oh, French keyboard always ruins all the hotkeys. Okay. So, we've got that. That works pretty well. Now, let's actually play around a little bit with the rotation here. So, something that I'm feeling right here is at the very beginning, it feels like that ball is just spinning like crazy. Technically, when it's in the air, it doesn't really need that much spin to it because it's not rolling on anything. So I can actually take that spin and I'm going to make sure to set a key here when it hits the ground. And then I'm just going to take this first half of the ball roll. I'm just going to bring it down. And actually, let's add one more key here just to maintain this ending here as close as we can. I'm just going to flatten that out a little bit right there. So again, think of your curves. If it's flatter, it's moving less fast. It's moving slower. So now that spin at the beginning isn't going to be going nearly as far. And I think I messed something up. Yeah. Let me undo adding those keys. There we go. Don't want to mess up my curves. So if you're noticing that the insert key tool, so this is a very useful tool. If you hit S, you'll notice that it's messing up my curves here. And it's kind of wiggling things around. I don't like that. And this is because I've adjusted the tangents in Maya. If you don't want that to happen, you can use the insert key tool. But you'll notice that right now, mine is doing the same thing. That's because my insert key tool got switched. If I open up the settings by double clicking on this icon right here, I can turn on or turn off, I should say, preserve tangent type right there. And now when I insert a key, you'll notice that the curve stays exactly the same as what it used to be. So now I can just go in here, add a key right here. I want to preserve that roll at the end. Let's add a key right there. Those curves are perfectly preserved now. They are not being tweaked in any way. And I can now just lower that down. There we go. And now we don't have that crazy spin at the beginning of the shot here. That's feeling better. And once again, I'm just going to add a little bit of roll Z because I like to do that. It just, at least to me, it feels a little bit cooler. There we go. Let's play through that one more time. Just see how we've got that. Yep, that feels heavy. Cool. Let's do the light ball now. So light balls, how do we make it feel light versus heavy? I should have explained that a little bit more at the beginning here. So a heavy object, it will tend to have a little bit more hang time and slam into the ground a little bit more. And the timing is going to be a little bit shorter. It's not a matter of speed. A lot of times people think that a slower object is going to feel heavier. It just feels bigger and more gigantic if it feels slower. That's actually the opposite. The slower something moves, the lighter it can feel. And that's what we're going to be doing with this next ball here, the light ball. we're going to try to move it a little bit slower on each bounce. So you don't get that nice... It's just going to bounce, bounce, and just kind of floating in the air. What makes a heavy object feel heavy is that it takes a while for it to slow down, and then it takes a while for it to speed up. But once it moves at speed, it's going to be fast. So you might have like that slow motion and it comes through. It will move quickly once it gets up to speed. So let's take our light ball here. I want a few more bounces. I don't know if it's coming through all the doot doot doots I'm doing as I'm doing a lot of sound effects right now, but I don't know if my mic is picking it up. So as it comes in, okay. So let's do the first drop here. It's going to be frame 9. Now, why am I doing that? Well, I'm just going to respect physics here for a little bit. In physics, if you take two objects, a heavy bowling ball and a tiny ping pong ball, and drop them from the same height at the exact same time, they will hit the ground at the exact same time. Unless the air density is enough to affect the ping pong ball. So an example would be if you dropped a sheet of paper and a bowling ball. The bowling ball will definitely hit first because the sheet of paper is so light and it's catching so much air that the air density is slowing it down. If that's not a factor, so like a ping pong ball and a bowling ball, it will hit the ground at the exact same time. The force of gravity pulls down on both objects at the same rate. So in this case, even though my light ball is much lighter, they're going to both hit the ground at the same time. Okay, so from there, 9, that's 8, 16 frames right there. Let's go. So if it's 16 for that first arc, if it was a full bounce, this is going to be 14. Yeah. So we're going to drop it a lot less here. 35. 12. Yeah. So 16, 14, 12. Math. 49. I'm just talking to myself now. Okay, there we go. So essentially, where the heavy ball, we lost a lot of time very quickly. Just big bounce. It slowed down very quickly. For the light ball, we're going to have a bounce. 2, 2, 2, 2. And it just loses a little bit of time on each bounce right there. Okay. So we've got this. Let's break all of this down in half. And there's our bounces. So same thing. Get the degradation arc. And I always just start with the last bounce. Get that little bit of a micro bounce in there. We want it to be really tiny. And we've got a few more bounces here. So this time I'm actually going to use a degradation arc. So we're just going to grab this key here, move it at the top. So I'm just using one of my rotation curves once again. And then take this one, move it up to there. And then we're just going to drop this. And this degradation arc is going to be very shallow so that we don't lose a ton of energy right off the bat here. Now, another way you can do this, if you want to sculpt your curves, is you can use the Lattice Deform Keys tool right here. And essentially what that allows you to do is use this lattice deformer to shape your keys slightly. Now, I'm not usually a fan of using this because it can be kind of tricky sometimes. As you can see, my tablet doesn't want to release them for some reason. So I'm just usually doing it like this. So there we go. And very quickly, let's just get the contact in there. And this key is off center. There we go. So we'll just take all of the contacts here, break those tangents, and then just suck them in right there. Okay. So, like so. Now, let's get an idea of the timing. Does this feel right? Not bad. Something feels off, though. That second bounce is too high. So I'm going to just push this down a little bit more. It feels like it's gaining, still got too much energy. I'm going to take this, let's drop that down a little bit more, and then try this. And this is where this curve is really nice, because it just gives you that guideline, so you're not just guessing at all of the different keys there. Let's try this. That's better. Okay. So with that, let's actually round out the curves, because that's going to give us a better indication of the actual speed there. And once again, for a light ball, the way you're going to make it lighter is don't let it pop up quite so fast. You want a little bit more of a linear motion. So we don't want triangular like this. Like this would be perfectly linear. Straight up, straight down. But what we don't want is something like this, where it's very fast, holds, very fast down, because that creates weight, that big slam downwards. It needs to feel like it's filled with air. I'm thinking like a beach ball right now. So as it goes up, it's going to bounce, come down. Just that nice, soft motion in there. So the motion is going to be a little bit more on the linear side here. Okay. Let's see how that feels. There we go. Now all of a sudden that's getting that nice weight in there. Now something else that will help make this feel lighter is making the bounces shorter. If I just scale all of these down here, you'll notice that that really makes this feel much lighter right there. Now I don't want to go too far, because then we start to just get a weird loss of energy on that first drop. But yeah, let's go with that for now. So with that, we now have our translate Y of the light ball. There we go. Now all I need to do is add my forward translation and then my rotation. So let's get that in here super quick. What is this random key? That's what it was. Okay. So this one, let's have this one take a while to stop. So let's actually have it go right to the end here. Now, light balls, they again have a range that you can do, and it really just affects the feel of it. It can either be really slow, like it just takes a long time for it to come to a stop, or it can be very short and just come to a stop very quickly. And really what that gives you is the idea of how much, how to put it. I'm forgetting the actual scientific term. It's essentially how much air resistance there is. So for example, if you think of a ping pong ball, it's very, very light, but overall it's mostly just plastic. That's its main constituent, is plastic. And it's very light, so it'll just keep bouncing forever and ever and ever, and just keep going forever and ever. If you have a beach ball or a balloon, there is plastic, the outer coating, but most of it is air. And because air is the same density as air, it means that it's not going to have the mass to keep moving forward. So it's going to stop very quickly. That air resistance, that forward resistance, is going to be very, very tough on it. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. Both are correct, but it depends on what style you're going for here. So let's kind of go with that. I'm trying to make this a little bit more linear overall. Right there. It's going to help make it feel lighter. There we go. So I think with that, yeah, we'll just keep this simple here. Copy the translation, put it on the roll X here. Edit, paste. Select the curve. Edit, scale -1. And then just scale up that curve here. Too much spinning in place. There we go. I could nitpick it and go really close, but I think that gets the idea across. And then once again, let's add our roll Z. 3, I think, was my last frame here. Just to get that little bit of visual design in there. Okay. There we go. So now let's look at this here. See how this feels. There we go. I feel like the light ball is coming to a little bit of an abrupt stop there. So what I'm going to do is just take my translate Z and just ease that in a little bit more. You can do this with a key, or you can just bring the tangent out if you're using weighted tangents. I'm going to have to do that with my roll so I don't mismatch them. There we go. That's better. There we go. Heavy and light ball. Done. I feel like there's a little bit of a pop in the heavy ball right through there. I'm getting picky. So it's the translate Y. I think I just need to make that a little less sharp coming down here. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Yeah. There we go. So, there we go. There's assignment 3. Heavy and light ball. Now, the heavy and light ball is one of the harder assignments because part of it is really understanding how to get the weight working in there. How to get the object to actually feel heavy or light. And a lot of that comes from observation and observing a lot of different things. If you just look at a bowling ball, that'll tell you how a bowling ball feels heavy. But a bowling ball is very different from a cannonball, very different from a lead weight. Their core is different, their materials are different, and they will feel heavy in different ways. Same thing like a balloon versus a beach ball versus a ping pong ball. They are all light objects, but they are all light in different ways. So this is one of those things where a lot of observation is going to help build that mental library that you can then use to create that specific feeling that you're going for in these objects. So yeah, I hope that made sense. We definitely went through this one a little bit faster, a little less explanation there, but hopefully it was still helpful and still made sense.